Hello. We'd just like to take this opportunity to share the Assessment Mitigation Centre guidance for Wales and Northern Ireland in relation to the COVID-19 disruption. Last week we held an online forum with some of our centres to be able to go through some of the questions that people may have had around the Mitigation Centre guidance for our qualifications in Wales and Northern Ireland. We're more than happy, should you have any further questions following this webinar, for you to get in touch. You can get in touch directly with us, or you can contact your external quality assurer. Okay, so let's have a look at some of these assessment mitigations. My name's Janet King, I'm the Sector Manager for Education and Childcare, and I'm going to be joined today by the Cash Product Specialist, Karina Poultney-Shaw. And at the end of the webinar, Karina will ask me to identify some of the key points. Okay, so we do appreciate and acknowledge that this year and potentially going forward, we need to be mindful of the COVID-19 impact and influence. And to be able to create this document, we've worked together with other awarding organisations as part of the collaborate to be able to agree, along with SEA and along with Qualification Wales, what this document involves. And you can see the other awarding organisations there. So as we say, the coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in disruptions in education and training during spring and summer 2020. Public health restrictions are likely to be in place during 2021, and further disruption may occur on a localised basis. To mitigate the disruption to teaching and learning and assessment of a range of health and social care and childcare qualifications that are detailed in Appendix 1, flexible approaches have been applied, specifically where there are requirements to include direct observation as the main source of evidence, and where work experience or practice hours are a mandatory requirement of the qualification. To be able to see copies of this documentation, you will be able to visit QualHub, and you'll be able to see this document and go through this perhaps in your own time and with appropriate staff. By putting in place these arrangements, the awarding organisations, awarding bodies, have considered issues relating to the manageability, validity and reliability of the relevant qualifications and their associated assessments, while simultaneously responding to the prospect of ongoing disruption during 2020 and 2021. The following arrangements have been collaboratively developed and agreed with awarding organisations and the regulatory bodies of Qualification Wales and SEA, as well as the relevant workforce regulators in both Wales and Northern Ireland. They apply to health and social care and childcare qualifications delivered in Wales and Northern Ireland. And you saw the logos earlier. So the collaborative has involved City and Guilds, NCFE Cash, Pearson, OCN Northern Ireland, BIAB and Agora Cumbria. These mitigations update and replace those communicated in summer 2020 and will be available until the 30th of June 2021. They apply to any learners who were registered and on programme before the 31st of August 2020 and have yet to complete, and any new learners registered from the 1st of September 2020. Observation of practice, competency-based qualifications. Where it is safe to do so, observation by an occupationally competent and qualified assessor is preferred as the main source of evidence for all learners. Where this is not possible due to protracted disruption caused by COVID-19, the awarding organisations will accept testimonies provided by a suitably experienced employer, manager, leader, recruited by the centre to undertake the role of the expert witness. So that involves the centre working with the providers that are supporting the practical experience for your learners. There needs to be a collaboration there to make sure that the right people are in place as the expert witness. And we can look at that in further discussions and further information that we provide for you. Centres must ensure that expert witnesses fulfil the specific requirements detailed in the Skills for Care and Development Assessment Principles, and/or their recently published Flexible Arrangements document. This includes the requirement to provide expert witnesses with some knowledge, some induction to the role, training and ongoing support that is timely, meaningful and appropriate. And again, any aspects around that, any questions around that, please do come to us for more specific guidance. Additionally, centres must adapt their internal quality assurance strategies to ensure that assessor judgments based on expert witness testimony are prioritised for standardisation and sampling activities. We've had questions about the use of recording and standardisation. So the appropriate use, recording, standardisation and sampling of expert witness testimonies and the process of expert witness involvement through induction, training and support will be subject to external quality assurance by the awarding organisations and bodies. So each of those awarding organisations that have collaborated to create this document will be looking at how the expert witnesses have worked collaboratively with you in order to achieve the competency criteria. It's important to note the wording in bold here. Certification will not be possible for any competency-based qualification unless substantial assessor observations and/or expert witness testimonies are present in a learner's portfolio, and that these are based on experience within a real work setting. Please note that the Skills for Care and Development Assessment Principles and the associated flexible arrangements are endorsed by Social Care Wales and by the Northern Ireland Social Care Council. You'll find more information in the appendices. So, what about recording expert witness testimony? Centres should enable expert witnesses to provide and present their testimony in an efficient way, ensuring that this does not compromise validity and reliability. This could include the use of voice and audio recordings, or through remote discussions where the main assessor could scribe the expert witness contributions. Paper and online forms are permissible. Throughout the process, centres must ensure that the confidentiality, dignity and privacy of individuals, children, young people or families using services remains paramount and must not be compromised. This is particularly important when video and/or audio streaming or recording is being used. And there's some advice around the use of technology to support assessment. In order to protect confidentiality, dignity and privacy, the use of video and/or audio streaming or recording is not permitted for direct observation, where an individual, child or young person or their families may be present or wherein personal information about their care is being discussed. Additionally, it is not permitted to use technology to record supervision or appraisal meetings. Video and/or audio streaming and recording can be used to gather evidence in the following situations only: assessment planning, feedback and review, team meetings, only aspects of the agenda that are general in nature, for example, not linked to the care of a specific care of an individual, child or young person or their families. Planning and/or review of the learner's training and development. Planning of supervision and appraisal, professional discussion, planning and recording an expert witness testimony, and learner reflection. Key to the mitigation process is the triangulation of evidence. The requirement to capture evidence of competence and applied knowledge and understanding continues to be best practice and is essential to robust assessment. Triangulation of evidence during this period must include assessor observation and/or expert witness testimony, learner reflection, professional discussion, all of which must be associated with that real work environment. Reflections based on simulation and case studies or scenarios will not be accepted. Simulation is a useful way to learn about new skills and to develop and gain confidence in a safe and supportive environment, for example, when learning how to use a hoist. In some circumstances, it may be used to judge competency, for example, the assessment of first aid skills, including different forms of CPR. Within competency qualifications, simulation is only permitted where explicitly detailed within a specific unit. Simulation must not be used in any other circumstances. And if you have any questions around that and how you may or may not use simulation, please talk to your external quality assurer. This is another key area as part of the mitigations process. Where a work experience or practice requirement is a mandatory requirement within a qualification, wherever possible, awarding bodies and organisations expect all learners to achieve this requirement in full. Where this is not possible due to the impact of COVID-19 restrictions, learners will be able to progress to certification in the following circumstances. The learner has completed at least 70% of the required work, and you will see a list in chart form below that shows you the comparisons. Steps have been taken to support the learner to achieve the required work experience and practice hours, including part-time employment that's relevant, bank and relief options, volunteering, and work during holiday periods as appropriate. The actions taken to secure the full requirement of work experience or practice hours have been recorded and are available for internal and external quality assurance. Again, you can spend time looking at this table to see what the 70% looks like. So, flexibility and what that feels like. In extremely exceptional circumstances, and we're talking about at least a term, certification may still be possible for learners who have completed less than 70% of the required work experience practice hours. Awarding organisations will continue to work collaboratively with all relevant stakeholders to monitor learners' ongoing access to work experience and practice. Any further adaptations relating to work experience will only be considered by the awarding organisations where robust triangulation of evidence is present within a learner's portfolio. Significant expert witness testimony from the employer which details the learner's competence has been consistently displayed over time. We want to see progress of that student actually being able to meet those competencies confidently over time across all units within the qualification and is sufficient to meet the specified assessment criteria. It's important to note that a single expert witness testimony will not be accepted as enough evidence. Substantial and holistic learner reflection across all units within the qualification, clearly evidencing the integration of knowledge into practice. Reflections must be linked solely to the learner's work experience, their placement. Reflection based on simulation, case studies, or scenario-based reflection will not be accepted. Significant professional discussions between the learner, assessor, and the expert witness. These will occur over time and provide opportunity for the learners to expand on submitted reflections for the purpose of assessment. The expert witness testimony to enrich and validate the learner's reflections. The assessor to gather evidence relating to outstanding areas of competency, particularly in relation to the integration of knowledge into practice and/or aspects of practice occur infrequently. In light of the level of uncertainty currently being experienced with regard access to work experience and practice, and to help ensure the best opportunity for a successful outcome, centres should use this model of triangulation for all learners who are completing competency-based qualifications. So, the Level 2 CCLD and the progressing learners onto the Level 3. Learners who are progressing from the Level 2 CCLD to Level 3 during this academic year, 2020-21, are permitted to carry forward up to 25% of the total work experience practice hours that were undertaken during the completion of their Level 2. This allowance will only be available if the learner can evidence recent, and recent we're looking at the previous 2 years, authenticated and relevant work experience, which reflects some of the competency requirements of the Level 3 qualification to which they are progressing. All learners seeking to access this adaptation must undergo initial assessment against the requirements of the qualification and an individual learning plan produced. Internal quality assurance strategies must be adapted to ensure adequate sampling of this process and its outcomes with the associated documentation for both aspects made available for external quality assurance. If you have any questions about your progressing learners, please speak to your external quality assurer. The external quality assurance activity will confirm that assessment and internal quality assurance has been conducted in line with the qualification specification and/or the adaptation outlined above. Where the adaptation has been applied, the EQA will check the following: the validity and reliability of the process used for assessment, that expert witness testimony has been used appropriately and only where permitted. All possible routes to secure work experience practice have been exhausted before the 70% adaptation has been applied or additional reduction pursued. Internal quality assurance has been planned and implemented appropriately to the adaptations applied. An appropriate use of technology for any video, audio streaming and recording has been applied. Where you have questions around external assessment and any qualifications such as the extended diploma in children's care, learning and development, please do get in touch in the first instance with your external quality assurer. The awarding organisations will continue to monitor and review any ongoing COVID-19 restrictions and their potential to disrupt learner access to work experience and practice and qualification assessment. For some qualifications, such as the Level 1 or where there's a knowledge-only side to these qualifications, it may well be the case that no flexibilities or mitigations are required, as assessment can continue to be delivered and assessed in the usual way. And you'll be able to find information about those qualifications in Appendix 2. In Appendix 1, you can see qualifications where adaptations have been applied and where this document, therefore, is applicable. And in Appendix 2, you'll be able to see qualifications from across the board where no mitigations are needed. Please take time to look through this documentation. It's a long documentation with lots of information in there, and you may well have some questions following this webinar. We would therefore encourage you to talk about those amongst yourselves as a team, and then to contact your external quality assurer in the first instance for a discussion to be undertaken. I just want to see now if Karina has got any questions or anything that she would like to share or bring forward at the end of this webinar. Thank you, Karina.
Thanks very much, Janet. Yes, I've got a couple of areas which I'd like. I think there is a little bit of wording issue with the document where it states that centres will recruit expert witnesses and train them, and that there will be an induction, etc. Can we have a little more clarity around that? Because the word recruit may mean that centres will think that they have to recruit and pay their expert witnesses.
Yes, absolutely. So working collaboratively between the centre and the provider is absolutely paramount. So in terms of recruit, we are literally talking about that relationship, building that relationship with those representatives from the provider who can actually support through that expert witness position. So it is about collaboration. It's about managing the expectation. It's about making sure that preliminary discussions take place between the centre and the provider so that everybody is aware of the seriousness of this business and about what is required to enable that learner to be able to meet the assessment criteria. So it's looking at who can be an expert witness, what's expected of that expert witness testimony, and how that triangulation is going to work. So it's about conversation, it's about confidence, and it's about building that relationship so that the rigour, the validity, and so on of assessment maintains in place.
So in essence, if our centres are already working with their settings and already have that kind of relationship where they're using expert witness testimonies anyway, they shouldn't really have to do any more, is that correct?
They shouldn't have to do any more in terms of that's having the right person, you know, in the right position. And so it might be that discussions take place with the assessor, with the centre assessor, with that expert witness, with the student themselves, to have a professional discussion to really strengthen the robustness of that triangulation process. So discussions may well still happen, but probably that the provider has probably got the right person in place, and since they're employed, there is also that sort of extra wraparound rigour there as well.
Thank you, that makes it a lot clearer. I think in general, the major concern is actually how the learners will meet their placement hours now that the lockdown situation is in place. And I think many of the centres are asking, what can we do?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I fully appreciate that. And we have got the flexibility here, you know, where there is significant interruption on a local or national level, then you know there is some flexibility in terms of those placement hours. So you can have circumstances taken into account when the student has not been able to meet that mitigated 70%, for example. It's really important in a competency-based qualification that students have access to that real work environment, and that's you know something that is a given and something that we all appreciate in the professional world of what we're training students to be able to do in the workforce. So it's about thinking about the different centres, the different settings rather, and the different types of provision that might be available. Thinking maybe about changing the mode of placement. Is it easier to do it in a block? How is this going to work? For health and social care, for example, maybe looking at that breadth of health and social care provision to be able to gain experience, although we do acknowledge and appreciate that it is difficult. It's just about working with your providers. It's about gaining the confidence of the providers and making sure your students are as prepared as possible within the risk assessments that are in place at the moment for COVID-19 as well.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Janet.
You're welcome. So I'm going to bring this webinar to a close, but I just want to say that there's a lot of information here. It may well raise as many questions as it does answer. So please do not hesitate to get in touch either with Karina or myself or through your external quality assurance.